Hey, welcome back to our collection close-ups. My name is Maxime and today we'll be talking about Mankala. So, Mankala is a game popular throughout Africa and it's basically a version of chess that uses counting as the way of battling, let's just say. And so the board is divided into two sides, and the goal of the game is to get as many points from your opponent as you can. I wouldn't go into the details of the game itself, but I strongly encourage you guys to look for apps or even go to the website where there are workshops on how to make your own game of Mankala, just so you can play it for yourself and see it for yourself. That's always much more enjoyable. What I'm really going to focus on is the history of Mankala and also of the creative liberties and genius really that was put into these boards to make it not just a game but even a form of art, let's say. And so firstly, we'll begin with the history of Mankala. Mankala has many various histories across the continent. One history though that I can relate directly is in the case of the Kuba, with their first king known as Shyaam, who is credited with making many innovations in the Kuba culture. One of his innovations is the game of Mankala. So much so that in the tradition of Ndop figures of the Kuba, which are royal portraits, each king has a depiction of what he is famous for at the base of his board. And in the case of King Shyaam, at the base of his figure is a board of Mankala. And so that not only goes to show not just his introduction of the game, but also just the popularity of the game, because King Shyaam is reputed with a lot more important, or at least directly important innovations such as crop rotation, the introduction of currency, standards and norms, really establishing the culture itself. So it says quite a lot that of all the innovations he's noted to have presented, Mankala is the innovation of choice. And so a bit of the artistic genius behind the different boards is one, for example, this one up here is just the emotional expression behind it. You can imagine a player or just the enthusiasm that is being depicted by the face at the top, which is at the end of the day just a simple game of Mankala. On the far left here, you have what's another interesting depiction of the game, where it is probably a different style of game because there's 4 rows, just like that one, but probably the same game at the end of the day. What is particularly interesting about this board, which you probably cannot see from this angle, but I'm sure once you do visit the museum and you can see for yourself, is that it has a very nicely sculpted base. And so with this one, it's not just the fun of the game, like on that one, but also the utility of it. And then finally we have this board, which is really very much a combination of every interesting aspect of the joy of Mankala. You have the game itself, again, and you even have a pattern in between separating the two players' sides. You have, again, further to the gaming, is where you'd place your points at the end of each round, which are depicted as heads with mouths gaping wide open. And so it's not just a place to put the points, but also a very finely sculpted and quite deeply recessed way of doing so. You also have a bit more of the emotional side and just a bit of the artistic touch, which is, for example, these two figures face to face, which could just be depictions of players in general, because you can see this one a bit more stressed and this one a bit more calm, which also has to do with the game of Mankala itself, which is it's very much associated with nobility or leadership because of the idea of one, tactics and the tactic strategy, and secondly, good economics, because the game of Mankala, being a numbers game, doesn't just involve playing, but also involves playing with money, because oftentimes the game of Mankala is played with cowrie shells, a form of currency in the region. And then finally, you have the last aspect of it, which is also the most important, the practicality of it. In terms of sculpting this object, you can imagine how it was made, with this being perhaps the top of the log that would have been carved on. And I say that specifically because if you look at the base of the object itself, you can see that it was used from the same one piece of wood, and the final piece of wood was finished at the very bottom to be used as a base. And so this one I find combines a lot of the very interesting and artistic elements of not just the game of Mankala, but of the cultures specifically, and even of the continent as a whole, in terms of the ingenuity, not just in making something as simple as a game, but also the practicality of it, where this one log of wood was appreciated to its utmost, to the point where it was maintained as its base. And thanks again for tuning in. Take care.